Gospel and Homily for the 19th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year A. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he would send the crowds away. After sending the crowds away, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, while the boat, by now far out on the lake, was battling with a heavy sea, for there was a headwind. Now in the fourth watch of the night, he went towards them, walking on the lake. And when the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. But at once Jesus called out to them, saying, "Courage, it is I, do not be afraid." It was Peter who answered. "Lord," he said, "if it is you, tell me to come to you across the water." "Come," said Jesus. Then Peter got out of the boat and started walking towards Jesus across the water. But as soon as he felt the force of the wind, he took fright and he began to sink. "Lord, save me," he said. He cried. Jesus put out his hand at once and held him. "Man of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And as they got into the boat, the wind dropped. The men in the boat bowed down before him and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The Gospel of the Lord. There's a story told about a man who, while out rock climbing, he lost his footing and he found himself desperately holding on to a protruding branch. But in his desperation, he cried out to God for help, a bit like St. Peter when he stepped out of the boat. To his amazement, God answered and said, "Do you believe in me?" I do, replied the man without a shadow of doubt. But God said, "Do you really believe in me?" To which the desperate man replied, "Yes, there's nothing more certain of that." "Okay," God said, "let go." To which the man screamed, "You can't be serious. Is there anyone else up there?" People can be plagued, I think, by all sorts of fears, whether real or imaginary. They say that the words "do not be afraid" occur 365 times in the Bible, one for every day of the year. Medics tell us that fear and stress lowers our immune system, so we are more prone to bodily illnesses. A Moorish proverb puts it like this: "He who fears someone, or even some situation, gives it power over him." The opposite of faith, actually, is not disbelief, but fear. Remember from the story, Peter took fright and he began to sink when he felt the force of the wind. "Man of little faith," Jesus said, "why did you doubt?" Now, the positive side of fear, however, is that it prevents us from doing reckless things, putting our lives at risk. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Drink or drugs may appear to give us Dutch courage at times, but of course it's delusive, it's deceptive. There is a more insidious fear, which means we lack the nerve to really take charge of our lives and be our own person. Inadvertently, we may let others move in and take over. I've just been reading this week that people who are victims of modern slavery may not be fully aware that they are being controlled, and that's the problem. The same could be happening to us in our day-to-day relationships. It happens in marriage if we let it. Now, one of the danger signs is if we're always guarded in what we say, lest we receive a less than friendly reply. We daren't do things differently. We're scared of stepping out of line, scared we won't get the nod of approval. On one occasion, Jesus, referring to approval, he said, "Human approval, that means nothing to me. Only the approval," he said, "which comes from God the Father." Nowadays, we can even be sometimes muzzled by political correctness. PC has some good points, but carried to the extreme, it can make us victims of the cancel culture, which compromises our freedom of speech on a host of moral issues held sacred by the Church throughout the ages. As in the case of Peter, Jesus will sometimes invite us to step onto the choppy waters out of the boat in order to test our faith, I think. But we must keep our eyes fixed on him, or else we might end up going under, as it were. Jesus came to save us from anything which obstructs our growth as persons. Now, fear is one of those things. It keeps us restricted. The evil one aims to keep us bound and controlled so that we'll never be free to grow into the person or the persons which God wants us to be. On the contrary, talking about freedom, Jesus says, "If the Son of Man makes you free, then you will be free indeed." The choice, of course, is ultimately ours. Thank you very much for listening. God bless you all.